keep a closer look. So this first panel, ladies and gentlemen, consisting of a group of specialists in Hong Kong ecology, each with his and her own responsibility, will discuss the cross-sector effects in marine conservation. Basically what we try to do here is to see what it is that we can do when it comes to marine conservation from various angles and from various disciplines and from various responsibilities and institutional obligations maybe as well that we have and that we feel need to be part of that equation. A few years ago, as we all know, because many of you are members of this, I think it was 2 years ago, the MPA was established to bring NGOs together, coordinate activities, create synergy, and ideally also create a strong support from the government and the community, Hong Kong community at large, for the various objectives of the various members shared within the various meetings that the MPA has organized ever since. This Harbour Circle might be a good moment to reflect on what has been achieved so far, for instance, per institution, NGO, but ideally also collectively, on what synergy can be built and how, and also reflect on what roadmap should be developed for further action. Hence the emphasis on cross-sector efforts. And I really would love to see us also think about what action points can we formulate at the end of the day. What is it we can take home and work with and with others in the field as well. And ideally a next meeting MPA or a next Harbour Circle symposium, we can address these matters while hopefully in the meantime talking about this and calling for action as well. So without further ado, I would like to phrase the panel objectives and then turn, of course, to the dear panelists here after you've introduced yourself for 1 minute. The panel objectives are basically threefold. One, please give an overview of the current landscape and stakeholders of Hong Kong's marine environment and conservation efforts. That sounds rather simple, but it's not very simple, of course, but let's try to make a start on that one. Two, discuss challenges and insights on marine conservation and education, engaging different stakeholders. That's basically, in a sense, you, but it's you as well. And then three, propose action points for positive change and collaboration. Right. So I believe that we now reserve some time in the program for each speaker to briefly introduce her or himself. Would you like the speakers to stand here, or they can do this from sort of the chair in the living room? Because that's sort of the atmosphere we try to create here. It's almost like a living room. I invited 4 friends. Actually, I've invited 50 friends as well to sort of participate and listen and take part in the discussion. So please, Gray Williams, Professor Gray Williams, if I start with you.
Thank you. Can you hear me at the back? I don't think we need a microphone, right? My name's Gray. I've been working in Hong Kong since 1989. I'm a marine biologist, so I work on intertidal systems, on coastal systems, and I'm very lucky to work at the Swire Institute of Marine Science, which I think that's the picture right there in the middle. So that's where we work near Shek O. And I guess today I'm representing sort of some of the scientific community. I see KH is in the audience and Andy's in this, a number of scientists which are here as well. So
it'd be better to use
Don't worry, I'm not going to start again.
No time. Just continue, please.
So I guess the point is I'm here to represent the scientific community in some sense. Most of my research is field-based, so I'm working in the Hong Kong environment, trying to document the biodiversity and trying to understand the threats which it's facing and then how we might manage to sort of deal with those threats or find solutions for conservation and management. Thank you, Eust.
Thank you very much indeed. The list here is different maybe from seating. We can continue with Dr. Judy. Yeah? Dr. Judy 1.
So my turn.
Please, your turn, please.
Hi, I'm Judy. I joined Ocean Park Conservation Foundation as the Community Education Manager 3 years ago. And I got my PhD in Hong Kong, and I worked in the nature conservation for many, many years, over 20 years. You can't tell how old am I. And from the slides, you can see we are running a lot of programs. And next, please. So we also are funding agents, and we support a lot of researchers to all over the world to carry out experiments or research projects or community projects on Asian species, so that we also can collect scientific data. As Gray said, I think it's very important to carry out education programs because we need the data to educate, to tell people how important of that species. And next, please. And about 10 years ago, we ran a program, engaged university students. Like Gray, a lot of students had joined as well. And from the picture, I want to tell you, this is a very good seeding program. We kind of strengthen the participants to be very sure they can commit in the conservation work. And some of the participants, they became very famous conservationists in Hong Kong, like Dr. Song, and he works in the Nanyang University. And Apple Choi, you probably see her a lot on the TV shootings as well. Next, please. Yeah, I think we also have many education programs, so we can catch up more in the later session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. Next panelist is Stan Shi from Bloom Association, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Stan Shi. So I work in a marine conservation NGO called Bloom, originally from France, and then to Hong Kong. And in France, they mainly do deep sea advocacy and marketing and communication. But in Hong Kong, because we don't even know what do we have in the marine, in the ocean, we do have a very little research going on. So in Hong Kong, we mainly focus on research. And I don't think I'm representing the whole NGO because I also eat seafood. So I think I would rather say I represent a Hong Kong citizen. And I am very honored to be nominated as one of the National Geographic Expo a few years ago. So thank you. I hope I can share my experience and knowledge in Hong Kong on research and NGO work.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Joost. Thanks, Timothy. So when I was looking at the pictures, just to put really as a background, I think what would happen with most people in Hong Kong is that there's an enormous amount of pictures of the sea, whether we're in it, on it, recreating, socializing, eating from it. So I just thought that was quite an interesting observation. So I've been in Hong Kong for coming up 33 years. I'm a research scientist from my first 2 degrees. And I worked for the first 11 years in Hong Kong in environmental consulting, doing large projects, environmental impact assessments. Much more recently, I've been working in advocacy, trying to drive policy change, particularly focused on conservation. And then very proudly, in October 2021, we were selected to take over the responsibility, a very heavy responsibility of being the Secretariat for the Hong Kong Marine Protection Alliance, which we've been working with all the different stakeholders. And I'll say a little bit more about that later. So that's my background. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Timothy and Stan and Judy and Gray for the brief introductions. So you know a little bit who you're facing, although I think many of you know each other quite well by now, I believe. And that's also the beauty of the NPA. It's a good moment, a good place to get to know each other better. For the sake of time, why don't I jump into what maybe should be the essence of the discussion here for the first panel. Gray, why don't I start with you, and maybe we can see this question that I'm going to ask as pertaining to all the 3 other working and living habitats as well. I actually referred to this in the little film that you saw. It's a fantastic marine environment that Hong Kong has. Some people claim actually it's unique because of the number of marine species. It's because of the layout, the fairly limited space where all these species live. When you read this, that something is unique, it's either fantastic or it might also be a threat. in a sense, because it might be that it excludes you from being part of something else if you are unique. So my question basically to all four of you is, starting with Ray, is do you share that idea that the biodiversity for Hong Kong and marine biodiversity is unique? And if so, do you see this as an advantage or a disadvantage? And maybe as an underlying question, how do you, in your daily job, refer to that uniqueness, or how do you show that uniqueness? How do you give that a place?
I knew there's a disadvantage to sitting next to Joost. You have to go first. So, well, unique, of course, can be good or bad, right? You can be uniquely good or you can be uniquely bad. A lot of my colleagues, when I first came to Hong Kong, and even now, they say, what do you work on in Hong Kong? There's nothing left, right? It's just a big city. They've trashed everything by now, development, pollution, etc. And I think that the uniqueness we're talking about, Joost, is quite what you are meaning, is the fact that we are unique in that we have a very, very rich biodiversity compared to many other parts of the world. We all sit, in close to the Coral Triangle. It's the world's hotspot for marine biodiversity. But when we did some research at SWIMS, when we looked at the biodiversity at Hong Kong as compared to China, we have 25% of the species in less than 0.05% of the coastal area. And that actually is quite stunning. So yeah, we are unique and we have a very rich biodiversity. But the point is, I don't think people are aware of that. I think our uniqueness maybe is that we're not able to convey that message. We're not really able to make people aware of what we have. And awareness was a word that was used in the opening statements. And I think one of the tasks which we face is how do we make people aware and how do we make them understand what that 25% of the biodiversity of China means? What does biodiversity mean? So I think these are challenges as scientists that we face, is trying to think about how we convey that, how we make people aware, and then how do we make people care? So I think our uniqueness in some ways is tying us down because we are unable to convey that adequately. Haha, you're second.
Yeah. If I may, Julie, before you respond, in your presentation you indicated that over the years, no fewer than 557, if I put this correctly, people have applied for money to do research projects together with the foundation. So maybe you can also allude in your response to one of the points that Gray mentioned, is how to make people aware. How do they know about Hong Kong? How do they know about the various projects that we organize, or the projects that they can organize with Hong Kong money? Right? So maybe you can incorporate that in your response as well, because that might be a fascinating element for many of us to get a better understanding of.
Yeah, I think the organizer need to deduct your time and then share to us. Sorry about that. Just joking. And okay. I as a worker for the education, and I always avoid to do teaching, and I try to speak the same language as this audience. That's what Grace said. How to convey the message. How to make them understand and be part of it. And I think the advantages of having such a good high biodiversity in Hong Kong is because Hong Kong is small, and it is very easy to bring students or groups to the field to see and experience and carry out a lot of activities on site and within an hour of traveling time. I think this is the advantage. But the drawback would be it just gives a very little room of buffer to protect the animals, because we bring people there, we need to be care of the capacity or the stress that we produce. I think this is what the education team need to be aware of. And I think this is that I can share at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Judy. Without further ado, I immediately go to Stan, of course. Stan, what's your take on that uniqueness, and how does it refer to your daily work?
I think Professor Great Leader mentioned we have a rich marine biodiversity underwater, but we shouldn't be also forget we have a rich marine biodiversity at our market, fish market, dry seafood market. So to me, one of the unique things in Hong Kong is the word seafood. We are actually the highest per capita seafood consumption in the Asia. And what does that mean? It means we are taking marine resources from more than 150 countries or areas to Hong Kong. And that actually provide an opportunity in Hong Kong that we can use those data to actually understand what is trading and who is trading what. And that also help us to look at the market to provide opportunity using those data and also DNA forensic to actually understanding species that could be threatened or even leading to update their conservation status or to even protection. So that actually help us. But not only that, because I remember we had a workshop in Africa and also in Middle East. Some of the countries, they don't know what they're exporting. They just know some Asian really like to take their marine resources. And they don't understand why, like sea cucumber. Why you guys like to eat sea cucumber? We actually can provide volume to trade because they don't have those export data. We can actually utilize Hong Kong as a trading hub, use those data to help them to have a better management. But of course, like Professor Gray said, unique can be good or can be bad. Like, it's also because of the seafood, the term seafood. It's like when I go to aquarium, I remember people seeing a salmon, and then they immediately, the father pointing to his daughter and say, sushi. I was like, maybe there's rice. And then when they see a grouper, they will say, like, I have eaten them, but then they taste good. And so immediately the connection of like seafood, the term is food. It's not they're wrong. It's about like they had the bonding between Hong Kong people or human to the marine is the seafood. So how we can actually make sure they understand like they are more than just seafood. Because when you eat, for example, you eat a Wagyu beef, you will only complain they're expensive. You wouldn't think about like to protect the cow. But the seafood is like we have to actually make sure they understand seafood, they do have a life and they can be threatened. That's something we have. It's not only awareness in this term because it's the bonding, the connection. So how to make sure they understand seafood is not just seafood. They are animal. They should be also, some of them should be also considered to be protected. Thank you.
Talk about protection. There we go. Yeah, nice.
Well, thanks. Actually, I think that's a really good point, which I'll pick up in the words I want to say is that there is a disconnect. But if I can just go back a little bit, just really to give us a bit of context. Hong Kong is unique. We've got 263 islands. 60% of the Hong Kong territory is sea. Much of today's urban land was recovered from the sea in reclamations. 40% of our land area is protected by Country Park. And we've all been spending more time in there thanks to COVID. Country parks are effectively protected from development. Now, Hong Kong historically was a fishing village, and as Sam has said, people love to consume the fruits of the seas, and seafood is hugely popular and consumed in terms of the per capita. We've overfished our waters and we've depleted our stocks, and again, as Sam has said, we've supplemented those by fish farming and by importation of fish from outside Hong Kong. We treasure our marine waters and we use them for beaches and water sports, but less than 5% of our waters is actually protected. And this internationally is a tiny percent. In terms of our stakeholders, could you go back a slide? In terms of our stakeholders, I don't propose to go through this. We've got a very strong and informed network of local and international green groups with all of their expertise, both locally and from the work that they do overseas. We have got world-class universities in research, in marine science, people like HKU Swims and the other universities. And we also have educators, and we have corporates that are concerned with marine protection. If you could just go back one more slide. And that really is sort of summarized in what was mentioned earlier by Joost, the Hong Kong Marine Protection Alliance. And what that does is uniquely pull together green groups, academics, educators, and corporates, all with an interest and expertise in marine conservation. And I think the time is good for policy change. We recently changed the Environment Bureau to Environment and Ecology. That has to be good. in terms of China, ecological civilization is a very big issue of our president. And locally, Hong Kong's biodiversity strategy and action plan seems to have been given a bit of warmth with the recent new chief executive. So I think policy-wise, it's good timing and maybe a potential tipping point. But we face increasing development pressures. We face the streamlining, government's term, not mine, of the environmental impact assessment and other ordinances. And what that tells me is the time is really now for urgently increasing the protection of our most ecologically sensitive and important marine habitats. And we're protecting them for future generations to sustain our fish stocks, our seafood, our marine ecosystems, and the environments for work, rest, and play that I showed on my first slide. So in my opinion, what we really need to do, and I'll elaborate a little bit more, is that we really do need to have a strategic approach to do a catch-up in terms of retrospectively catching up in terms of the protection of our waters, to bring it in line with international standards and bring it much closer to the protection that we afford our land versus the sea. Thank you.
Well, excellent. Thank you very much, Timothy. And basically what you said in your last sentence gives a beautiful leverage to another question that I have. Actually, it's the last question I have because we really need to keep an eye on the time, unfortunately. And why don't I start with you, because you concluded that way as well. The question I have in front of me is, what is your vision for creating more cross-sector synergies for marine conservation and education in Hong Kong in the future? And also, what are the resources and support, the tools in the sense that you hope to get in order to come to that point, to create those objectives or to reach those objectives? I think in a sense you already started to allude to a number of common denominators that might be felt within the audiences here. So why don't you continue a bit on that one, please?
Thank you. I do feel that the HKMPA does comprise all of the ingredients that we need. We can act as a conduit, basically bring the scientific knowledge to the policymakers, to key opinion leaders and decision makers. So I believe that the platform and the collaboration will allow us to communicate to the policy level, to the Environment and Ecology Bureau and to the departments below, the importance of conservation. So I do feel that the synergies, which is a very overused word, but I think that genuinely with the HKMPA, that 1 + 1 does not equal 2, that we have the great strength through the synergies. And I think, as I said, we need to use the time now to move forward. We've been waiting for a new administration to come in government, and waiting for them basically to get their feet under the table. But basically in October, November last year, the MPA started our government relations effort. And so we'll be talking on Friday amongst MPA about the work that we're doing, which is really kicking off the government relations work. I do believe that there's an appetite within the Bureau and the departments to have further protection. I do think there's an understanding that we're way behind where we should be, and we need to seize on the opportunity and the strength of the platform to communicate that to the government right now.
Excellent, thank you. And I appreciate that you, because of your function and because of the MPA, particularly focus on, say, the political level, if you'd like, and the lobbying, which is crucially important, of course, because if we don't have the support from the government, it's going to be quite difficult. But when it comes to education, for instance, what kind of cross-sector, if you'd like, opportunities do you see there? Working together, Ocean Park Foundation and HKU SWIMS, other universities outside of Hong Kong who may have a lot of expertise when it comes to particular research facilities, for instance. To what extent do you feel, and there's a question, of course, for Judy and for Gray in particular, if you don't mind, Stan, to what extent do you feel there is an infrastructure there, or maybe there isn't, and maybe it should be developed?
Thanks, both. Just a quick feedback about that. I think that they could have many things can be done. Like I would expect, like in the coming next 5 years, probably another good opportunity to put the conservation in education at a higher level because of the need in from ESG or the the climate change, and a lot of conference talking about that to bring it at a higher level. And of course, I agree with Stan. We should make use of all the venue and the any locations that can be engage students or the audience, not only in the in the nature. We can bring them to the market to see how is the selling of the seafood and identify the endangered species. They could do their own promotion at the level and in the community. I would think like this is probably the effective way to do it. How about Gray?
Yes. So I was trying to think about how to answer that question, and I think I'll be rather obtuse, which I think you'd expect. So I think we look at the MPA and what we all do, and I think everyone's got their unique niche. Everyone has something which they're very, very good at. And I think in terms of universities, we're there for research, and we're teaching higher education students. And I think that sort of system is quite good. It works quite well. But the trouble is, we need friends. That's what we're good at. But to actually be effective, we need to be good at so many other things. And I think that's where the possibility of expanding and using a synergy, as you mentioned, Tim, is what we should really be looking for. And also breaking away from each little group working in their own little field and moving more towards having one big group working together. I think that's where the real challenge lies, because to do that, you have to be really brave. You have to put down your own speciality and start to interact with other specialities and put your work into things which may not be directly related. And I think that's where the real education comes in, because that then allows us to deal with a much wider audience and to actually then be effective. And so I think it's a challenge for us to be able to do that.
Excellent, thank you. Stan, your take on this when it comes to the synergy being created by cross-sector efforts, education-wise, or when it comes to policies, for instance, and lobbying?
I mean, first of all, I have to explain. I'm the spokesperson of HKMBA, so which means I have to say something like really positive for HKMBA. So I think it's really good, like because we get to share about the information. Think about like we have the synergy, like everyone can do can practice their expertise doing something, but also to share what exactly that we are doing. For example, like I work on fish, and now I actually understand like, oh, she works on horseshoe crab, and then we understand like what exactly they're doing, and then to think about how to actually collaborate, and also to share the information, like share the expertise, and then people just can learn more and like hopefully to get better every like each sector in the HKMBA.
Well, I should have said in the beginning that I'm a relative layman when it comes to what's exactly going on at this particular moment when it comes to marine science. So forgive me my question, but relating to your point, Stan, is there such a thing like a matrix? You got 40, 50, 60 NGOs, institutions focusing on green and blue environment, say. And do we know, and judging from what you said, I have my doubts, honestly, do we know what we do? Do we know from each other what we do? And can we find ways to seek that synergy and find collaboration by further developing such a matrix, or by lack of another better word maybe? Is there such a thing? And if there is, fantastic. If there isn't, this might be a good opportunity to think about this as well. Oh, either one of you, please.
I think it's a very good point. And if I can just sort of rewind back about a year ago, when we first started working with the Alliance, I think we had 29 issues that previously, in the previous 12 months, that they worked on. And that just shows the breadth of concerns that there are. Some of them were pollution from the land, littering, plastics. So what we did, and I'll get back to your matrix, what we did was we actually wanted a consensus. We wanted to look at the members of the platform and all of their strengths, as Gray says, sort of on the science side and on the educator side, and basically not duplicate the work of any individual group, but to basically harness all of that together and focus that heat of that combined effort on an issue. And as I said in my introduction, that we did it in a very democratic, lowercase democratic way. And we kind of discussed all these issues. And what we alighted upon was this dearth of protection of our marine waters. And so what we have done is we've identified that looking at international standards, looking at the Hong Kong waters, and we've identified that in order to catch up, that we need to urgently, we don't really use the word lobby, but we urgently need to communicate with government that we need to have at least in the short term immediate priority 10% of our land of our waters protected. Internationally, the standard would be by 2030 to have 30%. So there's quite a steep trajectory. And going back to your matrix, we do have a huge variety of expertise. What we've been trying to do is we've through consensus picked on the increase of protected areas, and that we believe that every member of the platform can contribute to that, whether it's in terms of education, science, corporate support, financial support, or political connections. Mm-hmm. So we feel that if you did that matrix amongst all of the members and amongst our targets to increase protection of marine areas, I think we have all the ingredients. What we now need to do is to work collaboratively to communicate that with the opinion leaders, the KOL, into the decision makers, and then up through that. Once we've built the support from that, then take it to the policymakers.
Well, on that optimistic note, I would like to conclude this panel discussion. I'm terribly sorry that we don't have that much time for other questions. If there are other questions, we have a little network session at the end of the afternoon as well. So please keep them in your mind and share with the people present here. Thank you very much indeed, panelists, for sticking so beautifully to the time while I'm working with you. Thank you, audience.